Welcome to Knowing Godly Play in a New Way. Godly Play is the curriculum we use here for education. It is published by Group Publishing. This is Knowing Jesus in a New Way. This story is getting very long. On the first Sunday, the very first Easter Sunday, the women went to the tomb. And Jesus appeared to Mary Magdalene. On the second Sunday of the Easter season, we remember how Jesus appeared to the two of the disciples as they walked to Emmaus. And then he was made known to them in the breaking of the bread. And on the third Sunday of the Easter season, we remember how the disciples were in a room with the doors shut, and Jesus appeared to them. 8 days later, he appeared to them again, and Thomas was there. And Jesus showed him his hands, and Thomas believed. And on the fourth Sunday of the Easter season, we remember how the disciples went north to Galilee as Jesus had told them. It was a long journey, some 80 miles. It took about 4 days to walk. Some of the disciples had grown up here, fishing with their fathers. So they went to the Sea of Galilee to rest. They were home. Suddenly, Peter stood up and said, "I'm going fishing." And he went towards the boat, and the others followed to prepare the boat. And soon they pushed off into the water, and wind filled the sails. They fished all night and caught nothing. But perhaps the sounds and the smell of the lake comforted them. They were home. The night sky turned first to pink and then blue. And as they looked toward the shore, they could make out a stranger on the land next to a fire. They could see the smoke and the red glow of the coal. The stranger shouted to them, "Have you caught any fish?" All they could say was no. And he said, "Throw your nets to the other side of the boat." What did they have to lose? So they hauled him in and threw him on the other side, and they could feel the fish moving as they held onto the ropes. But John was not paying attention to the fish. He was looking at the person on the shore. And he said to Peter, "It is the Lord." Peter got up, he jumped into the water, and he swam toward land. And he could feel finally feel the sand under his feet, and he waded to shore. The others turned the boat toward the land. And then the person said, "Bring some fish." And as they gathered around the fire, they could see that the stranger was no stranger. It was Jesus, but they were afraid to say anything. Have some breakfast. There were fish grilling on the fire, and he gave them fish and bread to eat, and they ate and they talked. And Jesus turned towards Peter and said, "Peter, do you love me?" And Peter said, "Yes, Lord. Feed my lambs." And then he said to Peter, "Do you love me?" Peter said, "Yes, Lord, you know I do." And Jesus said, "Feed my sheep." And then he turned to Peter for the third time and said, "Peter, do you love me?" And Peter said, "Yes, Lord." And he said, "Feed my sheep." And then Jesus began to talk to Peter about what it's like when you grow old, and sometimes people make you do things you don't want to do. And later, they thought that maybe Jesus was preparing Peter for his death as an old man in Rome. And they walked along the shore, and Peter looked back at John, who was following them, and Peter said, "Well, what about that disciple? What about him?" He meant, will John die like the rest of us? And Jesus said, "It is not for you to know these things." And then he was gone. So now I wonder, which of the stories you like the best today? I wonder where you are in this story. I wonder what will happen next.